Hello there and welcome to World News Program, streaming to you live on All 24 News. I'm your host, Knufa Zachary, and up next are the top stories. In the last 24 hours, 9 Zionist attacks in Gaza killed 103 Palestinians and others were displaced in the central Gaza Strip. Also coming up, the EU warns the Zionist entity not to attack Rafah, and Arab leaders stress the rejection of Zionist threats, and the Palestinian government urges the international community to prevent the invasion. Also coming up, a U.S. veto blocks Algeria's resolution in the Security Council for an immediate Gaza ceasefire. Algeria plans to submit the resolution again, urging an end to the bloodshed in Palestine. And Algeria advocates for Palestine at the International Court of Justice exposing Zionist violations of laws and deliberate actions to maintain control over Palestinian territories. Stay tuned for the details after the break. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off in our news, in the last 24 hours, the Zionist occupation carried out 9 new massacres in Gaza, resulting in 103 martyrs and 142 injured. Since October 7th, the death toll from Zionist aggression has reached 29,195 martyrs and 69,170 injured. And this is according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Some victims remain trapped under the rubble or stranded on roads with occupation forces hindering rescue efforts on the 137th day of the Gaza aggression. And in the early hours of Tuesday, dozens of Palestinian civilians were martyred in the central Gaza Strip as Zionist occupation forces intensified attacks on displaced families' homes. Zara Farjani narrates the story.
Yet another bloody night passes by in the Gaza Strip, with the Zionist airstrikes intensifying in the central and southern regions, the epicenter of the occupation's violence. The recent series of assaults has left behind a massive scene of devastation, with dozens of civilians killed and many others injured. Living in fear and imminent risk of death, displaced Palestinians in Rafah, weary from the devastating war, are pleading for a ceasefire as the humanitarian crisis worsens.
We are asking for a ceasefire. We want to leave. We want the Arab countries to intervene. We want someone to intervene. We can't take it anymore. We have no flour. We don't even know where to go in this cold weather. The cold is killing us. Where could we go?
We were afraid. All the displaced people are afraid, and even those who are not displaced, like the residents of Rafah, because the forces have no mercy. Children and civilians are being killed. They say they want to eliminate Hamas, but they lie. They target civilians, and most of those who were killed were children and women.
In Deir al-Balah, central Gaza, the toll of casualties is staggering. The streets resonate with mourning as families cope with the loss of loved ones. Men, women and children have all tragically fallen victim to the indiscriminate bombing campaign.
We were sitting safely and getting ourselves ready to sleep. As you know, the situation and the war. Suddenly we see a strike coming down. We thought that the mosque was hit or the house next to us. But we were surprised that the strike hit an empty land behind the house, and it caused all the damage. Imagine that the strike hit an empty land, and look what happened to the house.
In Nusayrat refugee camp, heartbroken residents gather to lay their loved ones to rest, victims of the relentless bombings that have shaken the community to its core.
This is the situation we are in right now. The cemeteries are everywhere, and they are all full, as you can see.
Amidst the ongoing Zionist crimes in the Gaza Strip, the United States, an ally of the Zionist criminals, has vetoed yet another UN Security Council draft resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. This move underscores a disregard for the lives of the 29,000 innocent people, granting the occupying forces the freedom to persist in their brutality and aggression.
Still with the same file, EU countries have warned the entity against the ground invasion in Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip. EU foreign ministers emphasized that the attack on Rafah would be disastrous for about 1.5 million refugees. Joseph Borrell, the EU's foreign policy official, stated that 26 out of 27 EU countries supported a statement calling for an immediate ceasefire. The League of Arab States rejects Zionist threats to invade Rafah, home to over 1.5 million Palestinians. The Secretary General, Ahmed Abul Gheit, highlighted the lasting impact of destruction and loss caused by the occupation. He emphasized the suffering of Palestinians and the occupation's attempt to undermine their cause.
I repeat from this stage our clear stance in rejecting the Israeli threats of invading the city of Rafah, which became the last resort for more than 1.5 million Palestinians who ran away from the abyss of aggression and devastation in the rest of the Strip. And again, I call upon all parties to immediately move to stop this savage operation, which might have devastating consequences on regional security.
Still with international reactions, Qatar strongly opposed any Zionist attack on Rafah, warning it could disrupt ceasefire negotiations and a potential prisoner exchange deal. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson, Majid al-Ansari, highlighted concerns about Rafah's population of 1.5 million Palestinians.
We confirmed yesterday that the role of Qatar is still ongoing, and the Qatari efforts are still ongoing, and that communication is still ongoing between all sides. And we also clearly confirmed that these statements and others can only be understood as a personal political gain in the framework of resolving internal conflicts that has nothing to do with freeing hostages, nor ending the suffering in Gaza. With regard of Rafah's invasion, I cannot comment on hypocritical scenarios. Today, we are still pushing as an international community not to allow Israel to carry out such an attack. There is no doubt that such an attack will have a very big effect, not only on the mediating front, but on the situation on the ground in general in Rafah. We're talking about 1.2 to 1.5 million people surrounded in an area that is 10% of the Strip in unbearable humanitarian conditions.
In turn, the Palestinian government urges the international community to prevent the invasion of Rafah and stop the aggression in Gaza. Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh calls for UN efforts to halt violence against Palestinians, highlighting consensus to condemn Israel's actions and urges recognition of the State of Palestine.
The world must prevent the invasion of Rafah. Rafah is now an explosive container, and the invasion of Rafah means the fall of thousands of martyrs. Israel must be prevented from executing this aggression, and citizens must be allowed to return to their homes in the northern and central Gaza Strip.
And as you followed in the headlines, the U.S. veto in the UN Security Council blocked Algeria's draft resolution for an immediate Gaza ceasefire. 13 countries supported it, and Britain abstained, marking the third U.S. veto on Gaza ceasefire resolutions. Algeria's UN representative, Ammar bin Jama, criticized the Security Council's failure to meet people's aspiration and urged it to fulfill responsibilities.
Fortunately, the Security Council failed once again to rise to the calls and aspirations of peoples of the world. This failure does not absolve the Security Council of shouldering its responsibilities. This failure does not absolve the international community of its obligations vis-à-vis the unarmed Palestinian people. This failure does not absolve the occupation power of its obligation to implement the precautionary measures ordered by the International Court of Justice.
And on the same occasion, Algeria's UN representative emphasized the need to end Zionist aggression in Gaza, highlighting that only a ceasefire can ensure access to humanitarian aid across the Gaza Strip.
It is high time for the aggression to end. It is high time for humanitarian assistance to be delivered across Gaza. It is clear that resolutions 2712 and 2720 did not achieve their objectives. It is clear that assistance did not meet the basic needs of the Palestinian people. We have to acknowledge that only a ceasefire can achieve the desired objective.
Algeria's UN representative Ammar bin Jama stated that it's crucial for everyone to uphold the principles of the United Nations and end the historical injustice against the Palestinian people. Let's listen.
The current situation requires everyone, as stressed by the Algerian President, His Excellency Abdelmajid Tebboune, to work on putting the purposes and principles of the United Nations first, to provide the necessary protection to the Palestinian people, and to put an end to their historic injustice.
Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, commenting on the Security Council's vote, affirmed Algeria's determination to return and demand an end to the bloodshed in Palestine.
Before I conclude, I would like to tell everyone that we will bury our martyrs this evening in Rafah, in Gaza, in all Palestine, and that Algeria will return tomorrow on behalf of the Arab world, on behalf of Muslim countries, and on behalf of all the free people in the world, powered by the souls of thousands of innocent people killed by the Israeli occupation with no accountability whatsoever. Algeria will return to knock on the doors of the Security Council once again to call for putting an end to the bloodshed in Palestine. We will not stop until this council shoulders its responsibilities in full and imposes an immediate ceasefire. We will never tire and we will never stop.
And following the U.S. veto of the Algerian proposed Gaza resolution, Russian Ambassador Vasily Lebensyak criticized the U.S. for granting Israel a license to kill and commended Algeria's professionalism in the Security Council.
Distinguished colleagues of the delegation of Algeria, on behalf of the Arab group, proposed a robust, balanced draft resolution, at the heart of which is a long-anticipated ceasefire. Our colleagues, our Algerian colleagues, organized negotiations in good faith. Conscientiously, they consulted with all delegations, and they strove to take their remarks into account. And we wish to highlight in particular the professionalism shown by our Algerian negotiating team.
And in turn, Palestine's ambassador Riyad Mansour strongly condemned the U.S. veto of the Algerian-led resolution on Gaza, calling it regrettable, reckless, and dangerous. He stated in a press conference that the veto sends a message to Israel that it can continue to act with impunity.
Appointed that, regrettably, we are extremely disappointed that a resolution was not adopted in spite of the fact that there was very strong support by 13 and a half, you can say close to 14 members. We will decide on the step that we will begin with, but we will not relent until we succeed in having a ceasefire. Such audacity of challenging the Security Council that he is going to implement 1701, and he is the lover of Security Council Resolution 1701, when he is refusing and attacking every Security Council resolution related to what Israel should do, is beyond the theater of absurd.
And at the International Court of Justice on Tuesday, Algeria asserted that the Zionist entity's policies in occupied Palestinian territories flagrantly contradict international laws. Ahmed Laraba, representing Algeria's legal team, emphasized in the public session on the legal consequences of Israel's occupation that it persistently violates international laws and rules and principles and intentionally prolongs the occupation.
Israel deliberately extends its occupation and creates an environment ensuring its continuation in Palestinian territories. Therefore, these intentions must be taken into consideration for an occupation that is taking new forms by imposing facts on the ground. Israel's policies of occupation have legal implications affecting all countries, and there is a continuous Israeli violation of international law and its principles. We call on the International Court of Justice to expedite the issuance of an advisory opinion, paving the way for a political horizon.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has completed its second mission to evacuate critically ill patients, including children, from the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis to other health facilities in southern Gaza. More with Salman Asseb.
Following the 5-month-long brutal Zionist airstrikes and ground invasion in the besieged Gaza Strip, infectious diseases are spreading due to shortages of food, clean water, and proper sanitation, exacerbating the already dire overpopulation crisis. Even hospitals, once places of healing, now are being deliberately targeted in disregard to all international laws. Ahmed Al-Farah, head of pediatrics at Nasser Hospital, now stationed in Rafah, highlights the escalating risks posed by unsanitary conditions and overcrowding.
We are facing a health disaster in every sense of the word, surrounding the children of the Gaza Strip. This disaster is represented by the increasing number of cases of bronchitis, intestinal infections, and sometimes fevers. The factor that helps the spread of the diseases is overpopulation, not having proper sanitation, not having proper sewage system, and the crowding of sick people in closed places. This led to a disaster that surrounds the children of Gaza Strip.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization undertakes its second evacuation mission from Gaza's Nasser Hospital, rescuing 32 critical patients, including children, amidst ongoing hostilities.
On Sunday and yesterday, there were 32 critical patients, including 2 children, that have been transferred to other hospitals in southern Gaza. These missions were connected in the close partnership with Palestine Red Crescent Society and OCHA. The team also provided limited supplies of essential medicines and food for the remaining patients and staff who are otherwise cut off from aid.
UN doctors have finally gained access to the Nasser medical complex, delayed for 2 days by Zionist troops, as reported by the World Health Organization.
We were shocked what we actually saw in Nasser medical complex. There's waste everywhere. Electricity was not working. Parts of the hospital are damaged and some severely damaged. The central drugstore, which was the drugstore, actually part of Nasser medical complex, which delivered drugs and medical supplies to the whole south of Gaza, destroyed. Unfortunately, with a lot of the supplies as well from WHO and partners.
1, 2, 3.
It's worth noting that amid the evacuation efforts, nearly 150 patients and medical staff remain trapped, facing imminent danger. Palestinian health authorities report a death in the hospital, attributing most to fuel and oxygen shortages. They describe the situation as catastrophic, emphasizing the direct threat to the remaining lives.
And in other news, and amid the ongoing Zionist aggression in Gaza, Yemen's Houthi group announced targeting 2 U.S. ships, Sea Champion and Navis Fortuna, in the Gulf of Aden. They also claim to have downed an American MQ-9 drone capable of surveillance and strikes. Here's Islam Said with a report.
Amid escalating tensions in the Middle East, the Houthis have claimed responsibility for targeting a Zionist cargo ship in the Gulf of Aden and launching drone attacks on U.S. warships in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, asserting their precision in attacks. On Tuesday, the group also released footage of downing a U.S. drone near Hodeidah.
وقد كانت عملية الاستهداف بعدد من الصواريخ البحرية المناسبة.
The targeting operation was carried out using a number of appropriate naval missiles, and the hits were precise and direct. Thanks to Allah, the total number of operations by the armed forces in the past 24 hours reached 4 operations. The first operation targeted a British ship, which was completely sunk by the operation, thanks to Allah. The second operation targeted the American aircraft MQ-9 in the airspace of Hodeidah province, while the last 2 operations targeted 2 American ships.
In response, the U.S. military conducted airstrikes on Houthi targets, including the use of underwater drones. Meanwhile, French warships intercepted and destroyed drones launched from Yemen.
During the night of February 19th to 20th, French multi-mission frigates detected multiple drone attacks originating from Yemen in their respective patrol zones in the Gulf of Aden and the southern Red Sea. 2 drones were engaged and destroyed.
Simultaneously, the European Union initiated a naval mission called Aspides, based in Greece, aiming to protect commercial and security interests in the Red Sea and Gulf regions. Despite intense U.S.-led airstrikes, the Houthis maintained their capability for significant attacks, refuting claims of targeting all ships in the Red Sea. They assert focus on Zionist, American and allied vessels, aligning with their goal to counter what they perceive as a Zionist-led aggression against Gaza.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will start consultations to appoint a UN envoy to facilitate engagement between Afghanistan's Taliban government and the international community. Guterres stated at a press conference that Taliban representatives declined an invitation to a meeting of international envoys in Doha on Sunday and Monday.
And we want Afghanistan in peace, peace with itself and peace with its neighbors, able to assume the commitments and the international obligations of a sovereign state, and at the same time doing so in relation to the international community, the other countries and its neighbors, and in relation to the rights of its own population.
To Algeria-related news now. On Tuesday, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune led a working meeting focused on free trade zones. The Algerian presidency clarified that the discussion centered on zones related to Tindouf and Mauritania. Algerian Army General Said Chengriha, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, is currently on an official visit to Rwanda, which began on Monday at the invitation of Lieutenant General Mubarak Muvanga, Chief of Staff of the Rwandan Defense. The Algerian Ministry of Defense stated that Chengriha's visit aims to enhance cooperation between the Algerian Army and the Rwandan Armed Forces, focusing on mutual interests. Algerian Energy and Mines Minister Mohamed Arqab delivered a written message from President Abdelmadjid Tebboune to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. During the visit, they discussed boosting bilateral relations, especially in energy. Mr. Arqab also discussed preparations for the gas exporting countries forum summit in March, hoping for Venezuela's active participation. President Maduro, in turn, expressed Venezuela's commitment to enhancing cooperation in the hydrocarbon sector. Prime Minister Jean-Michel Sama Lukunda of the Democratic Republic of Congo resigned on Tuesday, leading to the dissolution of his government, as confirmed by the presidency. Meanwhile, conflict between the DRC army and M23 Tutsi-led group has disrupted supply lines to Goma, affecting over 2 million residents and displaced individuals. Sofiane Kinturi reports.
In the DR Congo, particularly in Goma, the escalating conflict is pushing the city toward a dire humanitarian crisis, disrupt supply routes, a surge in internally displaced people, and overwhelmed medical facilities are sounding the alarm, signaling the urgent need for international intervention.
The humanitarian situation has sadly worsened on various fronts. As you know, the crisis in the DRC is one of the most severe, complex, prolonged, protracted, and neglected in the world. It has been going on for 30 years.
Market vendors caution of an imminent famine if the conflict persists and supply routes remain cut off. At the same time, Goma's Kishero hospital grapples with an overwhelming number of victims, as heavy artillery and shelling claim lives, putting immense strain on medical resources.
This will result in famine because all of us in Goma depend on the Minova Road for agricultural products. They must do everything to reopen this road.
According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, 135,000 people have been displaced from Sake in the past week alone, adding to the hundreds of thousands already displaced around Goma since 2022.
Some 100,000 houses, 1,325 schools, 267 health facilities, and large swathes of agricultural land have been damaged or destroyed, leaving an estimated 2 million people, nearly 60% of them children, in need of assistance.
The looming threat of famine and staggering toll on civilian lives emphasize the critical need for a swift resolution to this escalating crisis, which has persisted for over 3 decades.
And with this, ladies and gentlemen, our news bulletin comes to a close. For more details or more stories, you can always visit our social media network. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, take care.